I'm having a very interesting conversation already, and it's so interesting because it's 1 o'clock in the morning on the Pacific coast of the United States, and it's apparently a bright and sunny and gorgeous morning, whatever, 10 o'clock in the morning in Poland. I'm speaking with the Polish-American pianist. I want to ask you about that in a bit. Polish-American pianist Anna Kijanowska. Hope we got close on that one. And we are speaking about your recording, 2018 recording. It's called Lush. That is the title you chose for the CD, Lush, and it's for this reason: music of Liszt and two incredible Polish composers I had never heard before. Grażyna Bacewicz. We'll speak of her, the one of two of the most famous women composers, I think, if I remember reading correctly, in Poland. 1909 to 1969, covers an incredible span of years. Her Sonata Number 2, Liszt the B minor Sonata, and I want to jump in on that in just a minute about the way you play that sonata. And Łukasz Włosz, his sonata from 2016, inspired by Liszt. I don't know quite if I heard anything there, but you're going to tell me about it. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece, very accessible. We both agree that I'm not the only one that has not heard of this composer, Łukasz Włosz, and we want to spread the word about that sonata. It's a beauty. It's really a beauty. Very important work. Let me just give a little bit about Anna's credentials, and then we'll kind of scoot you into the story of your youth and life in Poland. Attended the Szymanowski Music Academy in Katowice. Am I anywhere close? Under the tutelage of Professor Józef Stampo. I hope I'm close there. A master's degree in piano performance and pedagogy from the Music Academy in
Wrocław.
Thank you. Very hard word. Polish. And then this I want to ask you about because it's like, talk about culture shock. Then you go to study piano in Boise, Idaho.
Right.
And that must have been, by the way, it's a very good university there, and I know why you went. You went to study with a very specific pianist who had been a student, and so on. You'll speak to us about that. Have your doctorate and master's degree in performance from the Manhattan School of Music in New York. You studied all over the place and with some very, very impressive pianists. Now you're back in Poland teaching at the conservatory in Silesia, in that district. You'll tell us about that. Why don't we just get started? How did life begin for you? When was that moment as a kid? I hope it's not too corny a question, but that moment when suddenly the piano said to you, I'm yours, you're mine, let's have a life together.
Actually, that started right when I heard Sonata in D minor by Liszt. And this is why the sonata is also on this disc. I still remember I was still a kid. We had a guest performer in Bielsko-Biała, where I went to school in Poland. And I just could not get over how incredible work that was and how powerful emotionally, technically. I was so impressed, not only with the pianist, but with the music itself. I remember it was, for me, it seemed like it was a very short work. Of course, it's a 30-minute piece, so it must have been rather longer for younger students.
And you must have been mesmerized.
I was.
As a kid to have it fly by like that.
That's right. And that was the moment when I decided I want to be a pianist. Of course, by then I was already in music school. I was taking lessons. I was playing recitals. I performed. I competed. But it was just that moment when I heard Liszt Sonata, where I decided, that's it. This is what I want to do.
Wow.
And after many years of studying the piece, I finally had the courage to record it, which, as you know, the piece is very well known. It got a lot of excellent recordings, and it's a tough call, but I think I succeeded with what I wanted to do with the piece. I wanted to give it my own voice, and that's why it is on the CD.
Well, and as I told you before we started recording, I've heard that masterpiece so many times, played by so many pianists. I never tire of it. I don't think the public tires of it. There's something just incredibly powerful about that sonata. The presence of it, even at roughly about a half an hour, it's just mesmerizing. But as I mentioned to you, instantly what I heard, and part of me wondered whether I might be offending you in any way, but I heard the most delicious light playing approach from you to that sonata. You know how the Russians tend to kind of really dig in and get wild and crazy with the Liszt Sonata, and it's so easy to do that, and it's perfectly okay. It's an approach. But I thought to myself, Chopin. This is Chopin. This is Liszt as Chopin, and presumably that is exactly the point of your approach to that sonata. You're Polish.
That's right. I'm Polish. I grew up in that environment. When I was growing up, everything was about Chopin. All education, all the concerts, most of the competitions. What mattered was if you won a Chopin competition or not. This is really what's the most important part. So we were surrounded by Chopin, of course, and this style and this aesthetics of Chopin. So
You know what I mean? An almost delicate approach to the Liszt Sonata. The way you play it, it's so clean and clear and really effortless and bright. Even I don't often think of that sonata as being kind of bright, and it's a real compliment, I would say, to you. It was just really a shocker from the very beginning. The way you play this sonata is superb, and of course it's magnificently executed by a superb playing. But let's get back to it. By the way, when did you you say it says Polish American pianist? Did you take an American citizenship at one point?
yes, I have dual citizenship.
I see. And then you taught all over the place at various colleges in Virginia. That must have been an adventure also. Charlottesville and Las Vegas.
That's right.
Basically, you've seen the USA and more. I mean, the world. And now you're back in Poland. Are you happy? You're teaching at the University of Silesia, and you're gonna
Yes,
have to tell me the name of that city. I can't pronounce it.
Cieszyn, yes, it's Cieszyn, University of.
Kiesin in Poland. How are things? And you taught for a bit at the University of Warsaw. Are you what's the ambition? I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but are you content? Are you happy there? Are you
Yes,
thinking
I'm
of?
happy and at the moment. Of course, it kind of all depends. Life, you can plan things, but life is life. Sometimes you never know what life brings. So, I'm not 100% sure I will stay here forever or I will return to the States. Not at the moment. I'm very happy. We have a lot of European projects going on with partnerships in number of countries in Europe, with, for example, with Portugal, with Croatia, and so on. So it has been very fruitful, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm involved also in publishing and other projects around Europe, which I think is very beneficial for me.
Yeah,
And also, I was out of the musical scene in Europe for so many years that I'm kind of happily went back, and it's been going very, very well.
Nice. And I'm thinking of a conductor colleague of mine who has is doing his years here in America. He has two orchestral posts in America, and of course he's conducting all over Europe as well. And he's beginning to yearn to stay centered in Europe, if I can say that.
Well, for example, I can give you a very simple example of how comfortable it can be. Last Tuesday, I had a recital at St. Martin in the Fields in London. And I managed to leave my house early in the morning, take a flight, play a recital, and come back home the same day.
You have a child, right? So you had those kind of.
So this is why I needed to come back. But it is possible. I have a 4.5 years old daughter. So we are, for now we are very happy here. It would be much more difficult in the States with, I don't know.
Yeah. And how is that to be a professional musician and a working mom? Honestly, I'm a man. I don't understand why men don't simply drop to their knees and salute you. How is this possible?
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Of course, sometimes it is difficult, because you can't predict when a child gets sick, and it might be a day of a concert or of a day you really have to practice. But, life is life. You have to do what's more important first sometimes.
And again, just not to dwell on it too much, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but again, I remember my own culture shock when I studied in London. Now that's a whole lot different than coming from Poland to Boise, Idaho. Give me those first impressions, those many years ago, whatever it was. Suddenly you're in Boise, Idaho.
Well, I think the most shocking for me was how I got to Boise, Idaho. At that time, it was 95 or 6. We really could not afford a lot coming from Poland. So I had about $100 or $200 on me. and I couldn't afford to fly from New York to Boise, so I took a bus. So I was on a bus for 3 days and 4 nights. The people I met on the bus, the scenes I've seen, all these stops, and that was a truly a culture shock.
Truly, a rapid introduction to the diversity of the American something.
That's right. That's right. At the university, the level actually was very high. We had international scholarship program. Madeleine Forte Sue had this wonderful program for us. So there were 12 people from Europe. So, at the university, it was more or less similar of, being in Europe, to be honest. There were people from Hungary, from Ukraine, from Finland, all over the Europe. So we were all together really enjoying the program and gaining a lot because we had a lot of time to practice. We didn't have to work yet. So it was really wonderful, wonderfully run. And very often I miss that time, being in New York. Of course, New York is wonderful, but you have to support yourself and you have to managed to find a space to live and study. And it was much harder in New York later on than it was in Boise, Idaho.
And how was that transition to New York? Was it Manus?
Manhattan.
Manhattan School of Music.
With Byron Janis, and at that time he was at the Manhattan School of Music. So that's what I did. I also got actually into another school in California, University of Southern California, but I chose to go to New York and study.
Probably the best choice, actually, despite the climate.
You never know, you never know. But yes, I was very happy.
And as I mentioned, I've taken notes about the style of your playing of the Liszt. But let's speak a little about these two incredible Polish composers. I'm going to ask you to tell us a bit more about these people. I think the most, let me just get down here to what we talked about the Liszt. Grażyna Batkiewicz, her Piano Sonata number 2. I don't recall seeing the date of composition. Do you have any recollection of the date of composition?
1953.
53, and she died in
53. Yes, 53. 1953. She died 59.
In 69. That's right. What about this wonderful composer? How did you discover her, or is she just standard repertoire for Poles? What?
She's fairly standard. The tragedy and the beauty of Polish music is that Chopin took such a prominent place in Polish culture and also in support from the Polish government that there is very little space left for other composers. And in my opinion, this is very unfortunate. So she is the one, along with Szymanowski, who I also championed. My first CD was with Szymanowski's Mazurkas. Both of them really kind of fall, outside the mainstream, and it's been difficult to really bring them back to life on international stages. This is really what my career has been devoted to. I've been promoting Polish music, but mostly unknown composers, such Grażyna Batkiewicz, Karol Szymanowski, now Łukasz Woś, in hope that, in some 20, 30 years, not only Chopin will be known as the greatest composer of all time.
And of course, Ziemianowski is becoming much more well-known internationally. His symphonies, I'm thinking number 3, was it number 3 I saw a few years back? Anyway, that's when I first discovered Ziemianowski myself, and I noticed your recording. It's very, very interesting. Piano music I don't know of Ziemianowski, but looking at Grażyna Batkiewicz, I'm just pronouncing her name because it's as close as I'll ever get. That second sonata, what I found, I'm just looking at it. It says my own notes are it's a voice I've never heard. For example, we can agree on that. Wonderfully accessible at the same time. It's a solid, meaty work, as you said, from 53, from the mid 50s, and yet somehow it's also very accessible. It's to a public. I think the Largo is gorgeous, beautiful, and reflective writing. How has it been to prepare that sonata? Was it tough? Does she have command of the instrument, or how to write for the piano?
Well, the first movement is challenging. There are jumps with very thick chords, and it's in general it's a neoclassical work. She was really classical South, and of course in the 30s in Europe, that was the style a lot of composers wrote in. But she was lucky enough that she studied with Nadia Boulanger in Paris. So this is where this jazz influence comes in. And the second movement is very jazzy, as you've heard, and very approachable as well. The third movement is based on Polish folk dance, oberek.
Because I see my notes say exciting, fun, peace.
Exactly, and it is because it's a Polish, folk music. I think the first movement is the most experimental as far as the harmony goes. She really tries to find new ways, and get out of the major and minor, system tonality and try to really experiment with harmony. I think this is where it's really the most modernistic.
Interesting, but not frightening from the public's point of view. Very, very accessible. And also, I read just very briefly that she felt very strongly about being very, very organized in her writing.
Yes. Yes, constructions, form. She was almost, I don't want to say obsessed, but that was the priority for her. The construction, the form. No, that comes also with neoclassical style, of course.
Yeah, and I hear a little Bartók, do I? Maybe?
That's right.
You can't not hear Bartók, I suppose, maybe in that time, in that period. And also the mid-50s, neoclassicism, Stravinsky, the Rake's Progress.
And I think the years in Paris, she spent, that clearly shows that. What's also remarkable was that she was the first female concert violinist.
From Poland, do you mean?
Violinist. Yes, well, she traveled around Europe, actually.
But she was one of Poland's first woman violinists that had that kind of career?
Yeah, that she had, who had international career, yes.
Interesting. I just took for granted she was a pianist, composer.
Actually, she premiered that sonata. Can you believe this? And she was a violinist.
When they're that good, concert violinist, and she sits down and plays her word of the piano. Did I read? And again, my sense of Polish geography is that you're in south. I think you mentioned southwest or southeast Poland, section of Poland, where near the Czech border, something.
Yeah,
like that. Czech Republic. Yeah. Did I read somewhere that Lukáš Voš is near you?
Sort of.
I mean, have you met him? I guess is the core.
Yes. We regularly meet, actually, especially when I premiere some of his works. We met a couple of weeks ago because I was premiering another work of him last week in London. A wonderful work based on Moniuszko's opera. He did really excellent job. He wrote that's the second piece he wrote specifically for me for that occasion. So we do meet. The sonata is also written for me for that CD. So this is very, very special for me. Yeah.
And it's an incredible sonata, really, as I have mentioned. A beautiful sensibility. It has these wonderful jazz chords that creep in now and again. It's full of lovely tonal temperament. Hang on, I got to get something under control here. Okay, and it's so accessible. It's quite mood changing. There are sort of episodic scene changes, if you will. I don't know, pianistically. It's so entertaining, so accessible, and as we discussed, how many North American pianists know of this incredible sonata? By the way, it ends in a manner that should bring people to their feet. How was it received at Wigmore?
Least ending. I'm sorry. It's very similar to a Liszt ending. I don't know if you realize that, but this is really, I think, where the inspiration came from. And what's really amazing is that the composer had no idea that I planned to put that sonata with Liszt sonata, and somehow he managed to.
And it says inspired by Liszt, and I've been wondering and thinking and pondering, and now you've just really hit it right on the mark. There's various associations. It's a great work for piano, and as I said, I must ask about this Lisztian inspiration. But he's a young man, isn't he? Born in something 69 or something like that.
Yeah, 69. He writes a lot also for wind instruments. Flute and saxophone are his favorite, and he wrote really many sonatas for flute. I don't even know how many, and they are great. I was actually very close to recording several of them a couple of years ago. I hope to go back to that project because they are really Amazing. I think he has a special gift for writing melody, you know. He writes those really beautiful,
Beautiful.
romantic, of course. It's in a romantic style. It's nothing, you know, modern from modern writing, but it's very beautiful somehow. It has this depth for me, you know, emotional depth, and so pleasant to listen to. You
Exactly.
know,
That's why I think it's so approachable in terms of audience. Audience will love this sonata. It's a continuous sonata in three movements, or do you separate? You don't, do you, or not?
no, no,
No. And what I found so interesting was the last movement, the toccata. I wasn't expecting the kind of jovial, speedy, pleasant, fun ideas that he puts out. Yeah.
yeah. It's amazing. Actually, the work he just finished, the one I performed last week in London, has this Mazur at the end. Of course, it's based on the opera from Moniuszko, but it's incredible, you know. So much fun and so vibrant and so live. It's just, yeah, it's full of life, I would say.
It's interesting. And how did the British public respond to that
Oh,
performance?
they loved it.
So
They loved
Is Europe a little more aware of Lukács than North America is? I wonder.
I don't think they've heard about him in London, but they loved the piece, you know. So they were quite noisy at the end, which was very, you know, yeah,
That's what you want.
some screaming, yeah, exactly, and yeah, you know, bravo. So
Well, I
so
think
it was great.
for basically what I want to ask next, and then I'm going to kind of wind it down. And by the way, I think of if there is a reason to for people to buy your CD, and by the way, I'll put our video interview up. I'll be reviewing the CD, the links to buy the album, all that good stuff. It's readily available. Romeo is a big label in Europe, but I think that Lukács Voss is probably one of the most important reasons to buy this CD for pianists, for serious pianists looking for fresh repertoire. Yeah. It's always an agony. It always costs a lot of money. There's the years of preparation, the studio. I just spoke with somebody who put together an orchestra, and that was a nightmare. You can imagine. Do you have any plans? Are you worn out between now and the next CD?
I do have a lot of plans. I'm still waiting for funding, of course, but we have some very unfortunate changes in the government at the moment. So I don't know if you know the university will be able to support my CD again, because that CD actually was supported by my university, which I think is very wonderful. But what I would love to do is another CD with actually Łukasz Woś, full CD with his piano works, because there's a lot of great pieces he wrote. I premiered at least 20 of them, so I really know his repertoire, and it's some great jewels there. Also, I'm very interested in Avner Dorman's music. I don't know if you know
I
Avner
do
Dorman.
indeed. I do. I love his piano music in particular.
Yes, yes, I love his sonatas. So this is another thing I would
Also a
love to.
very accessible composer, just a brilliant composer. All of the piano music of his I've heard has just stood out as entertain. All the good stuff that sounds somehow less than artsy. I mean, but so entertaining, so tuneful, just as with Vosch. Beautiful, tuneful, neo-romantic, I guess, if you wish to put some kind of crazy label on it. That's very interesting. Dorman and Vosch. Hmm. Or would they be separate CDs? Anyway, it's a huge, yeah. But in the case of Lukas Vosch, by the way, how about the help? I've got to find her name again. Hang on, because I want to pronounce it. Gazina Batsevich. I'm probably getting worse and worse as I move along. But have you had a little look at her other piano music, or is she worth diving into at some point?
I have, but there is not that much, unfortunately. There are just a few sonatas and some works for children. There are great violin sonatas for violin and piano, and I've played a lot. There's a great partita for piano, and there's some piano concertos. There are maybe a bit not as successful as the sonata itself, but and there are two quintets with piano, so I play one of them as well.
But I think the idea of a CD entirely devoted to Lukas Vosch, piano music, that's the one. That's the one, don't you think?
I will do.
I can't
Thank
wait. I can't wait. So let me just run down the details of this extraordinary recording. And as I say to so many people that I speak to, I am so lucky to discover wonderful, wonderful artists all over the world and incredible repertoire. There goes my clock. It's 1 o'clock, I guess, or something like that. In any case, this is your debut CD. Yes? No?
No, I had the
Oh,
Szymanowski's.
that's right. You did have the Zimaniowski. What was I thinking? Sorry about that. So what is this about? Your second or third CD?
It's
Lush?
my second solo CD. Let's put it this
Second solo CD. The title is Lush. And by the way, there's an incredible photograph of you all lushed up in your
way.
your gown and so on. Uh, Music of Liszt, the incredible B minor sonata, played with the light style and touch of Chopin. It's such a refreshing recording of that Liszt B minor sonata. It really is a stunning recording. And then two other wonderful Polish composers that need to be heard more and performed more. Grażyna Batsevich, her Sonata Number 2, and Łukasz Woś, a young composer, I suppose he's probably in his 40s or 50s now. His sonata from 2016 that is so accessible, so beautifully written and put together. Certainly a challenge to a professional pianist. There's no easy route in terms of playing the sonata, and yet so gratifying. The end result is so gratifying for the public as well as for the artist. Łukasz Woś, his sonata from 2016, three fabulous works. I don't know if we touched on this Hungarian Polish connection, but there is from the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the shifting of borders over the past 300-400 years, Poland and now the Czech Republic and Hungary and all that good stuff, that there are, as you have mentioned earlier in the conversation, folk song links, stuff that binds cultures, that defies borders, thankfully. I'm so tired of borders. It's ridiculous on the CD. So Liszt fits beautifully into this CD together with two 20th century and now 21st century Polish composers. What a delicious CD. I can't wait to get all of this up and get the message out about it. Those of you out there, hello, let me look at my audience out there. All those of you who are professional pianists looking for repertoire, pay attention. We got to have you to have a look and a listen, especially to these two wonderful 20th century Polish composers. Anna Kijanowska, excuse me, let me start over. Polish is so hard, Polish names. Anna Kijanowska, I apologize for the difficulty. Polish-American pianist. Thanks for a wonderful conversation it's so sweet, isn't it? You're a zillion miles away and we are still having a wonderful conversation. Thanks very much indeed for giving me some time. Now get back to raising your daughter and raising funds for the Vosh CD, will you?
I will do that. Thank you so
Okay, great pleasure. Bye-bye.
much. Bye bye. Thanks.